Welcome to Future English Academy. They locked him in a tiny prison cell for 27 years. Why? Because he wanted freedom for his people. But when he finally walked out, he didn't choose hate. He chose forgiveness. He didn't seek revenge. He sought peace. And then, he became the president of the very country that once imprisoned him. His name was Nelson Mandela. A prisoner who became a president. A man who turned suffering into hope. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in a small village called Mveso in South Africa. His father, Gadla Henry Mpakaniswa, was a respected local chief and advisor to the Tembu royal family. But after he refused to follow a command from a colonial magistrate, he was stripped of his chieftainship. The family was forced to leave Mveso and settle in the nearby village of Kunu. There, young Mandela herded cattle, listened to tribal stories under the stars, and began to dream, not of politics, but of dignity and freedom. Mandela was the first in his family to go to school. At his missionary school, a teacher gave him the English name Nelson. He later studied at Fort Hare University, a rare place for black students. But when he joined a student protest, he was suspended. Rather than apologize, he left. He moved to Johannesburg, worked as a guard and a clerk, and eventually studied law at the University of Witwatersrand. He was one of the few black students there. Many people looked down on him, but he never quit. Eventually, he became a lawyer. Together with Oliver Tambo, he opened South Africa's first black law firm. Poor black families finally had someone to defend them. People came with heartbreaking stories. Police violence, discrimination, unfair arrests. Every story strengthened Mandela's determination. The more he saw, the more he realized South Africa needed change. In 1948, apartheid became the law of the land. It wasn't just racism. It was a legal system, one that divided people by skin color. Black South Africans couldn't vote, had to carry passbooks, lived in separate areas, and were forced into poverty. Even schools, hospitals, buses, beaches, and toilets were separated. White people lived with power. Black people lived with fear. Mandela saw workers treated unfairly. He saw innocent people insulted and beaten. He saw children growing up without opportunity. Everywhere he looked, there was injustice. Mandela joined the African National Congress, ANC, and helped form the ANC Youth League. He believed in peaceful protest, boycotts, speeches, marches. But the government responded with violence. In 1960, in a town called Sharpeville, thousands gathered peacefully to protest the past laws. Police opened fire. 69 people died. Most were shot in the back while running. The massacre shocked the world. The government declared a state of emergency, banned the ANC, and arrested thousands. Mandela went underground. He knew peaceful protest alone was no longer enough. In 1961, he helped form Umkhonto we Sizwe, the spear of the nation. Their goal was sabotage, not violence against people, but damage to apartheid systems. In 1962, Mandela was caught by the police. He was arrested for leaving the country without permission and for organizing protests. The government gave him a 5-year prison sentence. But while he was in jail, the police found secret papers in a farmhouse near Johannesburg, in a place called Rivonia. Those papers showed plans for future sabotage, plans to damage railways, power stations, and government buildings. So Mandela, along with others, was put on trial again. The government wanted the death penalty, but Mandela stood in court and gave a powerful speech. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have always believed in a free and fair South Africa. It is a dream I am ready to die for. The court gave him life in prison. Mandela was taken away not as a broken man, but as a symbol of courage for millions who still believed in freedom. Nelson Mandela was sent to Robben Island, a cold, windswept prison off the coast of Cape Town. He would spend the next 18 years there, cut off from the world. His prison cell was tiny, no bed, no toilet, only a thin mat and a bucket. He worked every day breaking rocks in the sun. He was allowed one letter every 6 months and 2 short visits a year. When his mother died and later his son passed away, he wasn't allowed to attend their funerals. But Mandela stayed strong. He studied, he taught, he even learned Afrikaans, the language of the prison guards, to understand the system that tried to silence him. Some guards began to respect him. Even in prison, he was becoming a leader. In 1982, after 18 years on Robben Island, the government transferred him to another prison, first Pollsmoor, then Victor Verster. They hoped to keep him out of the spotlight. But it was too late. Mandela's name had already become a symbol of freedom around the world. In the 1980s, protests against apartheid grew around the world. Countries cut trade with South Africa. Celebrities raised their voices. People everywhere demanded, "Free Nelson Mandela." Inside prison, Mandela was offered freedom, but only if he gave up the fight. He refused. "I cannot be free while my people are still in chains." He was calm, firm, waiting for real change. On February 11, 1990, after 27 years in prison, Nelson Mandela walked free. He was 71 years old. He walked beside his wife Winnie. Crowds cheered. The world held its breath. He said, "I stand here before you as a humble servant of the people." He didn't ask for revenge. He asked for peace and unity. But freedom was just the beginning. When Mandela was released, apartheid still existed. Black South Africans still couldn't vote. Many racist laws were still active. From 1990 to 1993, Mandela and President F.W. de Klerk began long negotiations. There were protests, tensions, and even fears of civil war. But Mandela stayed calm. He wanted one nation, one vote, and a future built on justice, not revenge. Finally, in 1993, apartheid laws were removed. In 1994, South Africa held its first democratic election. For the first time, everyone could vote. Black, white, rich, and poor. People waited in line for hours. Some cried as they cast their very first vote. And on May 10th, 1994, Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. He didn't celebrate with pride. He served with humility. He welcomed those who had once imprisoned him into a government built on peace. He chose reconciliation over revenge and unity over division. In 1995, South Africa hosted the Rugby World Cup. For decades, the sport had symbolized white rule. But Mandela saw an opportunity to unite the nation. He wore the green jersey, stood on the field, and handed the trophy to the white captain, Francois Pienaar. The stadium roared, "Nelson, Nelson, Nelson." That day, a rugby match became a symbol of healing. Mandela served only one term and then stepped down. He believed real leaders knew when to leave. In retirement, he continued to fight for education, for peace, and for human rights. In 2013, at the age of 95, Nelson Mandela passed away peacefully. World leaders from every corner of the globe came to pay their respects. But Mandela's message never died. It always seems impossible until it's done. His life proved that truth. A boy from a small village spent 27 years behind bars for justice, then rose to lead a nation with peace in his heart. The world did not just watch Nelson Mandela. It honored him. In 1993, he received the Nobel Peace Prize alongside President F.W. de Klerk for helping bring an end to apartheid through peaceful negotiations. He received the UN Human Rights Prize, the US Presidential Medal of Freedom, and more than 250 awards from nations across the globe. Even his birthday, July 18th, is now known as International Nelson Mandela Day, a day to serve others just as he served humanity. The Nobel Prize, he said, is not just for me, but for all South Africans who suffered for freedom. Nelson Mandela lived through pain and turned it into peace. He spent 27 years in a prison cell and came out ready to forgive. He didn't fight with hate. He fought with hope. He didn't lead with fear. He led with forgiveness. He showed us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to walk forward anyway. It always seems impossible until it's done. This was the long, painful, and powerful journey of Nelson Mandela. What does the word apartheid mean? A system of racial separation and discrimination. What is the closest meaning of racism? Prejudice based on race. Choose the correct sentence using the word sabotage. They tried to sabotage the project by damaging equipment. What is the plural form of funeral? Funerals. My dear friends, what do you think about the world today? Every day, we see people arguing over politics, religion, race, and ideology. Sometimes it feels as if society is becoming more divided than united. In such times, the life of Nelson Mandela gives us an important lesson. After spending 27 years in prison, he had every reason to be angry. But instead of choosing revenge, he chose forgiveness. Instead of creating more division, he worked to bring people together. That is why Mandela became a symbol of hope, reconciliation, and peace. Today, we may have different opinions and beliefs. That is normal in a democracy. But we should never forget that respect and understanding are more powerful than hatred and division. No leader can build a better nation alone. We all have a role to play. Our role is to respect one another. Our role is to reject discrimination and prejudice. Our role is to be responsible citizens and contribute positively to society. Change begins with ordinary people making good choices every day. Nelson Mandela's story reminds us that true strength is not in defeating others. True strength is in uniting people and working for a better future. I made this video for people who want to learn English in a simple and interesting way through real historical stories and life lessons. What lesson did you learn from Nelson Mandela's life? Tell me in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.